Hello, let me turn down the music. Hello. I'm in a different part of the kitchen today, so dining room, I should say. So I'm trying to make sure everything looks and sounds okay. And I think it does. I think my book stack on the height of the computer is just right. And hi, Lexi, how are you? Let me turn up my mic volume and then let me know how the music volume is, if it needs to be turned down at all. If anything is echoing. Hopefully nothing is echoing. And then I can tell you what chapter we're on. We are on... Well, so we're going to... Here, let me tell you this. We ended on chapter 7. And at the end, we're going into the flashback. Twitch is not working right. Oh no. Well, hi CJ, thank you for joining. Welcome for joining. Rather, I should say. Is it my end or your end? Is stream okay? That is my concern here. Love that refreshing is giving... Oh. I really hope it's not on my end. Also, I didn't mean to be live on my starting screen for so long. I need to bring up my text thing. Pro Strimmer right here. Pro Strimmer. Bringing up my text thing so I can write down where I'm at for the timestamps. Oh no. If anybody else is available to tell me, is anyone else having problems with the stream? Or do you think it's just a Twitch thing? It is my internet. It usually isn't, but it seems particularly bad right now. I mean, maybe it's a time of day where lots of people in your area are getting on, and it's just the internet traffic is crowded. I'm not sure. Really trying to be in the center. Yes, I am kicking CJ's internet as well. How are you guys? It's good to see you. Is the music too high? I really can't tell. It sounds high in my ear right now, I can tell you that. I'm gonna turn it down a little bit on YouTube. Welcome for kicking. Welcome for kicking indeed. I never know exactly where I want to put my text bar thing because I want to be able to see the rest of OBS. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started because after this, I believe V and Terry are streaming, I think. At least it's V. I can't remember exactly what's on, but anyways, if you guys are able to let me know how the audio levels are, I would be eternally grateful. Just a reminder for those watching on YouTube that this originally aired as a live broadcast on Twitch, which you're always welcome to join. But just so you know, I will be chatting with my viewers in between chapters. But if you'd rather skip the chit chat and just listen to the book, there are timestamps in the description box below where you can click directly on the timestamps. It will take you to that part of the book. And last we were on chapter 7, and we were about to read a flashback to April 14th of 1936. So that's where we're going to start today. And you can see the book. Okay. Alright, putting my timestamp on here. Alright, so April 14th, 1936, 4 a.m. When George Marsh pulled up to the front gates of the Ellingham estate, 2 men in overalls holding shotguns greeted him. They waved him along, and he steered his Model B along the perilous Ellingham Road for the second time in only a few hours. Albert Ellingham and Robert Mackenzie were waiting for him on the drive. Mackenzie huddled in his coat, but Ellingham didn't appear to feel the chill at all. He rushed to the car door and was taken aback at the sight. "What happened? Where are they? Your face! What happened?" He was referring to the trail of bruises along Marsh's jaw and around to his eye, and to a gash in his left cheek. His left eye was almost swollen shut. They weren't there, Marsh said, getting out of the car. "What do you mean they weren't there? You didn't see them?" "When I made the turn toward West Bolton, I got about a mile down before they blocked the road with a car. I got out and they ambushed me. They want 200,000 more. There was no sign of Iris or Alice." Robert let out a hissing sigh. "You were right, Robert," Ellingham said. "They want more. So we will get them more. How long do we have?" 24 hours, Marsh replied. "There'll be another phone call. They said to have someone wait by the phone box on Church Street at 11 p.m. tonight. They wanted you to deliver it, but I got them to accept me as the delivery man." "Surely now we can call in the police and FBI," Robert said to Marsh. "We can have someone wake J. Edgar Hoover. We can't go on like this." "They said the increase in ransom was because you involved the police," Marsh said, "meaning me." "They don't want the police involved," Ellingham said. "I can give them whatever they want." "This will go on," Robert replied, his voice cracking with urgency. "You are an endless source of funds, don't you see?" An owl cut across the sky with a screech. "We should talk about this inside," Marsh said quietly. "Voices carry." The great house was quiet now, but it was not still. The electricity on the mountaintop was often erratic. The lights in the main hall flickered and dimmed. The house itself seemed to pulse. 2 more men in overalls waited directly inside the door, guns at the ready. They looked confused, jumpy, and seeing Marsh's damaged face did not reassure them. Montgomery the butler was still awake and attending. "Should I bring water and bandages, sir?" he asked. "What?" Ellingham said. Then, remembering Marsh's injuries, he waved his hand. Yes, bring them." Inside the office, Ellingham walked restlessly to his drinks table and poured some whiskeys with a shaking hand, giving one to the detective and keeping one for himself. "What have you told everyone in the house?" Marsh asked. "They must have noticed that Mrs. Ellingham and Alice have not returned." "We said we had a threat of the usual type," Robert said. "Anarchists. Mrs. Ellingham was told to spend the night in Burlington with a friend until we sorted it out." "Do you think they believe it?" Marsh asked. "Unlikely." The 3 descended into silence for several minutes. Marsh lowered himself into a chair. Ellingham stood at the fire, his hand gripping the mantel. Mackenzie sat and examined the letter again. Montgomery appeared with the water and bandages. Marsh wiped the blood from his face. "We'll get them back," Ellingham suddenly snapped. "We'll give them whatever they want. Iris is strong and resourceful. She'll be able to handle herself and Alice." "With respect," Robert said, "I must speak frankly in this circumstance. Mrs. Ellingham is resourceful. She is also strong-willed and athletic. She's a champion swimmer and skier. Do you think she would allow herself and her daughter to be taken without a fight? She will struggle. This has already gone wrong in several ways. Every moment we delay reaching out to the police at large is a moment she's in danger." "They're already upset that someone else is involved. Look what they did to Marsh. We can do this. We can get them what they want without further attention." "We may have no choice in that matter," Robert replied. "Even if we wanted to, do you think this is going to stay quiet? We have about 20 people in the house. We've got the school, and in a few hours we're going to have 100 men more show up for work. How does this stay out of the press?" "Have work for this week canceled and arrange for the men to be paid anyway." "That's not going to stop people from talking," Robert said. "This will be all over Burlington by dawn." Ellingham looked to Marsh, who was sipping his whiskey carefully through swollen lips. "Can you get that kind of money by tomorrow?" Marsh asked. "The Burlington Bank won't be able to handle a withdrawal of that size on no notice," Ellingham said. "Robert, wake up someone in New York and have them at the bank the moment it opens, and you have it flown here. Get our contacts together. Money, pilots. I want people awake now. I'm going to make sure the property has been secured." When Ellingham was gone, the policeman and the secretary regarded each other by the light of the fire. "I understand your disapproval, Mackenzie," Marsh said. "I don't like it either, but I think this is how we have to play it right now." "That letter. Should we use a rope or gun? Knives are sharp and gleam so pretty. Truly devious. The person who wrote that note is talking about murder, not kidnapping." "We do it this way for 24 hours, Marsh said. "Whoever did this, they know this place well. Assume we have eyes on us. If this estate is flooded with FBI, they could panic and act rashly. We stay cool, we do as they say." Ellingham reappeared at the doorway at the office. "Word has just come that one of the students is missing. A girl named Dolores Epstein. We need to have the grounds searched. This has to be connected. She's a good girl. She wouldn't run off. My God, we need to protect the students. We can't give the game away. We'll need to get them all out of here on some excuse." Robert Mackenzie wearily closed his eyes. He felt that he was watching a disaster in the making and could do nothing to stop it. Okay, that was April 14th, and we're going to start on Chapter 8. I think this is the most trouble I've had since I moved. I think I'm going to come back in a bit and see if it's better. Okay. No worries, CJ. I don't know that you're here anymore, but thank you for being here while you can. I hope your internet starts behaving. I will continue on with Chapter 8. Stevie awoke with a jolt the next morning in the unfamiliar bed. Her work of the night before was there on the floor. The faces of the Ellinghams stared up at her as she sorted her bath supplies into the blue plastic caddy she had so carefully chosen, shuffling the shampoo to one side, pushing over the shower gel, looking for the right place to stand the razor. She pulled on her pajama bottoms and a robe, put on her flip-flops, picked up the caddy, and stood in front of the closed door for a full 2 minutes, working up the courage to go out into the hallway. This was weird. Why was it so weird? She knew this was a dorm. She'd stayed over at friends' houses before. But this was different. These were the people she would be living with, and some of them were guys. Half of them were guys. So what? She was wearing a robe, and so what? She opened the door. No one was in the hall. Feeling victorious, she took measured, leisurely steps down to the bathroom. There was another bathroom upstairs. It was unlikely that everyone in the house would be crowded into this one. It wasn't very big, though, and it was already very steamy, and the one shower stall was in use. Stevie set her caddy on the windowsill and examined the frosted coating on the window to make sure it made it impossible to see inside. The shower curtain snapped back, and a dripping Ellie emerged. Technically, Ellie had a towel, but she was using it to dry her hair. The rest of Ellie was on show. "Oh, hey," she said. "The water's kind of cold now, sorry." She continued walking past, leaving sopping wet footprints along the way. As she reached the door, she looped the towel around herself, barely covering the major regions of her body, and headed out. That, Stevie thought, is confidence. Also, Ellie had bare feet. Stevie had the stupid flip-flops on. Her mother had convinced her that if she took them off for even a second, her feet would be attacked by terrible germs. The shower looked clean, but still. Also, the water wasn't kind of cold, it was completely cold. Still, a cold shower isn't the worst thing on a summer morning when you're already tired. This was pure mountain spring water. It was likely some kind of municipal water or something, but it was important to tell yourself a good story when you were standing under ice-cold water. Janelle was already at the farm table, intently reading something on her tablet as she ate a bowl of cereal. Pix was settled in the hammock chair, knitting. No one else seemed to be up. "Morning," Pix said. "Breakfast things are in the kitchen." Stevie shuffled into the kitchen and lunged for the coffee. She had a poke around the small kitchen, examining the contents of the cereal dispensers and the refrigerator. Suddenly, a bowl materialized next to her, causing her to jump. "It's free," David said. "Pix doesn't count the cereal and send you a bill." Stevie wasn't sure if this was supposed to be some kind of jab about money and lack thereof. Who said things like that? People like David, who also snuck up behind you in the morning when you were still half asleep. Did he know her family had little money? Did he want to play? Because she would play. No need to be nice, Stevie. Green light. She assessed him. He was wearing the same clothes he had been in the night before, and there were still one or two wayward feathers stuck in his hair. Either he hadn't slept or slept in his clothes. She inhaled gently, wine on his breath. Likely guess he was up drinking with Ellie. Interesting, but not enough. Look harder. In the daylight, she could get a better impression than she'd been able to in the dark of the yurt. His nose was long and fine. As he handed her the bowl, she took note of a band of wiry muscle that ran down his arm, and a beaten-up but expensive-looking watch on his wrist. The crystal face was scarred, but refused to break fully, and the leather strap, while worn, was still holding strong. She got a look at the face. Rolex. Now she was on to something. He had an unusual pattern of tan and burn on his arms. His one arm was bright red, the other just tan. Likewise, the one side of his face was much more red than the other. It was the kind of lopsided burn you got if you were half covered or turned the wrong way for too long. "So," she said, gripping the bowl tightly. She stuck it firmly under the Fruit Loops dispenser and poured herself a big bowl. "You're from California?" "So I hear," he said, getting himself a mug. She looked at the uneven tan again, the strips of healed sunburn, the pale patches. And his voice. It didn't have that slow, relaxed California tone. "Recent?" she said. "Recent what?" There was just a little edge in his voice. "Good." "You moved there recently?" she said, popping a few dry Fruit Loops in her mouth. "What makes you say that?" He was smiling, but it was strained. His voice a bit crisp. The move was recent, and the circumstances weren't pleasant. Rich boy, recent move, the topic made him a little frosty, and clearly he was acting out and needed attention. "Just something I picked up," she said. "Do you pick things up a lot?" he asked. The smile was full now, but thin. He leaned back against the refrigerator as the coffee machine hissed. He twisted the watch a bit on his wrist. Stevie watched this motion for a moment. David stopped, seemed to realize what she was looking at, and put that hand in his pocket. Something bad about that watch. Could you move?" she said. "I need the milk. I might as well get my money's worth." He smiled even more broadly and stepped away from the fridge door. "Of course," he said. "The girl detective needs her breakfast." Stevie smiled right back as she poured the milk and replaced it. Daddy Issues needs his therapist, she said. He laughed out loud, a little cough of a laugh. She had found a mark. It was wide and an easy mark, but it had landed. That little exchange should have been enough. It would have been perfect had it simply ended there. But, of course, there was no escape. He lived here, too. He took a seat at the end of the table and stared down the length of it. Nate joined them, creeping into the room with tousled hair. He seemed a bit more robust this morning and actually said hello to everyone. "So," David said a little too loudly, "what's everybody got today?" "Advisor meetings," Janelle said. "What are they like? I have Dr. Hinkle." "Do you like hearing people tell stories about getting lost inside the Large Hadron Collider?" David asked. "Always," Janelle said. "Then you'll be fine. Who do you have, Nate?" "Dr. Quinn," Nate said. "Oh," David shook his head. "Bind your wounds. She can smell blood." "What?" "And how about you, Stevie?" That thin smile was on her again. "Dr. Scott," Stevie said. "Captain Enthusiasm," David replied. Stevie caught Pix give a little grin as she knit. "He's bouncy. Are you going to solve mysteries together?" "David," Pix said. "Only asking," David replied. "What did you mean about the blood?" Nate pressed on. "Is she hard?" "Just remember there's no shame in crying," David replied. "After, I mean. Like me after I lost my virginity." "David," Pix said again. "Don't freak people out. Dr. Quinn is fine. You'll be fine, Nate." Stevie was hanging back on the virginity thing. Was that a joke? Had to be a joke. What did it mean? Was that one of those things where you said something really vulnerable to make yourself seem above it all? Had he said virginity louder than any of the other words in that sentence? Was he talking about her virginity? Oh, he was watching her now. He'd put it out there as a tripwire. She shoveled Fruit Loops in her mouth, but didn't savor them. The sugar scraped against her teeth. "Is she gonna ask me a lot about my book?" Nate asked. "Like what?" David said. "Like the plot? Best Dragon? Like, am I done? Am I working?" "Oh," David said. "Yeah, probably that. What's your blood type anyway? Just for reference." "David." David held up his hands. Kidding. He knows I'm kidding. You know I'm kidding, right, Nate?" Nate did not look like he knew this, and Janelle, who had watched this silently, was now ready to step in. "Come with me later on today, Stevie," Janelle said. "I'm going over to check out the workshop. I need to see where they keep the welding supplies. Can't wait to get my hands on my new blowtorch." On the word blowtorch, Hayes appeared, wet from a shower. His golden hair was stuck to his head. Unlike David, he was pristinely dressed in white shorts and a blue shirt. Even in this early morning state, he still looked unnaturally good. Except for his eyes. Those were completely bloodshot. "What time did you get up?" David said, looking him over. 4:20? "Didn't sleep much last night," Hayes said with a roguish smile. "No," David said. "Will we all be invited to the wedding? Beth, too?" Hayes shrugged and dropped into a chair. "So," David said, "you're famous or something now?" "Or something," Hayes said with a smile. "Yeah, maybe." "Zombie big business is big business," David said. "People love the undead." "That's my life," Stevie said. "I work at the Monroeville Mall." No reply from Hayes. In Pittsburgh?" Stevie said. "The Monroeville Mall." Hayes cocked his head and smiled at Stevie, but it was a smile of, "I have no idea what you were saying." There was a definite echo of how her parents sometimes looked at her, and it made her cheeks burn. Nate looked up from the milky depths of his cereal bowl, first to Hayes, then Stevie. "What made you want to write about zombies?" Janelle asked, in what seemed to be an attempt to keep some normal conversation going. Ellie stumbled into the room wearing a pink pair of ratty harem pants and a shirt that said "Art Harder." As a greeting, she sat down and casually put her bare foot on the table and examined it for a moment. "I don't know," Hayes replied. "I went home to Florida last year, surfed for a few days, and it just came to me. Sometimes when you get away, get a chance to think, that's when you have an idea." never know where you're going to get ideas, Ellie said. In Paris, we'd all sit around, have some wine, let it come naturally. I'm kind of talking to PG Edgerton about a movie, he said. P.G. Edgerton? He said. Silver Moonlight Motel, P.G. Edgerton? We're just talking, Hayes said with a gentle smile. But, yeah. Even Ellie took notice of this. P.G. Edgerton was the kind of director she would know. He made quirky art house kind of movies about manic pixie everyones. Movies that were turned into thousands of gifs, full of phrases everyone knew. Well, David said, good luck with that. Again, his meaning was unclear. It didn't sound like a good wish. You guys better get ready, Pix called from the steps up to her rooms. You have meetings to get to. Real life at Ellingham was calling. End of chapter 8. Ugh, sorry. Okay. I just need to make sure that the timing is still good. Yeah, looks like blind Nancy Drew at maybe 5:30 is what the time is. Okay. Well, I guess we can go on into chapter 9. Okay, chapter 9. Stevie walked in the clear sunshine of the Vermont morning along the snaking paths and under the canopy of trees to the great house. She rang the bell by the massive front door. In Ellingham's day, the door would then have been answered by his butler, Montgomery. Montgomery came up a lot in books about the case. He was the head of the Ellingham staff, trained in England, had served royalty, and was stolen away from one of the finest houses in Newport to head up the Ellingham Great House. After the kidnappings, he remained in service but was broken, shaken, and died a few years after. No butler now, just a gentle buzz to signal the door was open. She stepped into the cavernous space. Security Larry sat in the shadows at his desk right by the front door. Dr. Scott, right? He said. Stevie nodded. Have a seat over there, he said, pointing to some chairs by the massive fireplace. A few people were already there, including Germaine Batt, who was doing something very intently on her phone. When it's your time, go up the stairs and turn left along the corridor, he said, pointing to the balcony directly over his head. He's the very last room at the front of the building. Oh, sorry. Iris Ellingham's old bedroom, Stevie said, looking up at the ceiling. That's right, Larry said, leaning back. You're interested in the case? What's your favorite book on it? Murder on the Mountain by Sanderson, Stevie said without hesitation. His style is annoying, but I think he explores the case in the most depth. That's a good one, Larry said, nodding. Did you read the Ellingham case files? I think that jumps to a lot of conclusions, she said. He nodded at that. The air in the great house was cool, and there was a faint smokiness to it, despite the fact that it was very unlikely that anyone had smoked in there since the 1930s. She knew so much about this building. This main hall was made of rosewood imported from India. The 8-foot-high fireplace was constructed of pink marble from the Carrara region of Italy, where Michelangelo's marble was from. The fittings were all Austrian crystal, hand-selected by one of the 6 architects who worked on the project. The stained glass and evidence everywhere was in the style of the Glasgow school, which meant something very fancy. Stevie wasn't sure what, including a sunroom with a roof made of interlocking flowers and hidden birds. Stevie? Stevie Bell? She looked up at the sound of her name. Call Me Charles was on the floor above, at the rail looking down. He was wearing a Green Lantern t-shirt and chinos, his hair a floppy, schoolboyish mess. Come on up, Call Me Charles said. He met her at the top of the stairs and extended his hand for a shake. A woman came out of a nearby door. The first thing Stevie noticed was her height, which was accentuated by a pair of black heels with a buttery, subtle sheen. As she turned, Stevie got a glimpse of the red undersides. She wasn't a fashion expert, but she knew that heels like that were expensive, as was the finely cut pencil skirt and the large, complicated blouse sweater mysteriously flowing and folding. Her long hair was delicately colored in an array of auburns and golds. The woman was working her phone. Morning, Jenny, Charles called. Hey, she said, not looking up. She strutted on, never missing a beat of her typing. There was no missing the dismissive attitude. Stevie had never seen anything like it at her old school. Charles smiled and covered well. That's Dr. Quinn, Charles said. She teaches a seminar in American history and culture to all the first years. Come on, let's go to my office. The creaking wooden floors had carpet runners to muffle the noise. Each door on this level was made of heavy, dark wood with sharply cut crystal doorknobs that looked like they would be painful to touch. The last door, Iris and Call Me Charles's, had a corkboard attached to the front. This was entirely covered in signs, small posters, and stickers. Question everything. Stand back, I'm going to try science. I reject your reality and substitute my own. The biggest sign was in the middle and looked homemade. It read, Challenge Me. This was truly everything her parents feared, and it thrilled her as much as it repelled her. Inside, the room had definitely been converted. The pale silver wallpaper was probably original, but now the room was crammed with bookcases, a few chairs, a desk, and a small sofa. There were books everywhere, filling the bookcases, stacked sideways on top of other books, piled on the floor, resting on the back of the sofa, stacked along the mantel. There were 6 different diplomas and certificates on the wall, all heavily framed. Harvard, Yale, Cambridge. There was a picture of a rowing team, a group photo from Cambridge, evidence everywhere of a long academic career of importance. Charles waved Stevie into his chair. So, he said, I have to say, Stevie, yours was one of the most interesting applications I've ever read. Stevie sucked in her breath. Interesting was one of those uncertain words. You're very enthusiastic about the history of this place, and in crime and criminal procedure. You have an interest in working for the FBI? Stevie nodded stiffly. That's excellent. Let's see what we've got here for you. He consulted his laptop, taking a moment to put on a pair of glasses. So, based on your interest, this is what we came up with. You'll be taking anatomy and physiology, statistics, and Spanish. That covers your core and aligns with your interests. All very useful. Then we have you assigned to a tutor for readings in criminal justice and American legal history. You have yoga 3 times a week for your physical education. Everyone takes Dr. Quinn's literature and history seminar. Usually students do a small project in the first year that leads into the major project in the second. Have you given any thought to this over the summer? Stevie swallowed hard. She'd said it out loud the night before, but now, facing Charles, facing the actual reality of the situation, could she say it again? She pushed the words past the lump in her throat. My project is solving the case. Solving it? Charles said, cocking his head. Doing a report on it? No, she said. I mean, figuring out what happened. Charles removed his glasses, folded them, and leaned back in his chair. That's a fairly tall order, he said. Define that for me. I've read all the theories, she said, steadying herself in the chair. I've read all the transcripts. There are a lot of those, I think. The main interviews are about 8,000 pages, Stevie said. I think the answer is here. I think someone who was in the house that day was responsible. Hang on a moment, Charles said. He leaned back and considered her for a moment, pressing his fist against his chin. Each moment of his pause pulled Stevie down into her chair farther and farther. "I have an idea," he said. "Follow me." He grinned the grin of a presenter on some educational show with a cartoon dog, as if to say, "Come with me if you want to learn." Stevie hopped up and followed him back down the hall to the back set of stairs. They went up a floor to a door with a polite private sign on it and a digital access pad. Stevie liked rooms marked private with digital access pads. Stevie watched as Charles entered the access code on the pad. He made no effort to hide the number, which led Stevie to think he wanted her to see it. 1936? She asked. Not very creative, he replied with a smile, but easy to remember. The attic steps were narrow, plain, stained dark. Once they got to the top, everything opened up into a massive space that covered the footprint of the entire house. It was very dark. The windows were covered in light-blocking shades and curtains. "Obviously," he said, tapping the digital buttons on a panel of lights, "the Ellinghams had a lot of stuff. The papers went to Yale, some to the Library of Congress. The really valuable things went to the Smithsonian or the Met, or the Louvre or various art museums around the world. What we have here are the remnants of their lives. The furnishings, the dishes, the clothes, the household items." Flick, 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 the space came to light. Everything was nooks and corners, every direction just racks of metal shelving that went from floor to ceiling. Archive boxes and books in one direction, trunks in another, lamps, vases, extra pieces of furniture, bedsteads stacked by a window, chairs clustered together in a tight communion, ottomans, dressers pushed back to back. There were rolls of old wallpaper, globes, boxes of crystal doorknobs. Stevie felt like her brain had been replaced by a few dozen bees, bumping and swirling in her skull. "This way," he said. She followed without a word. Charles led her to the far wall, to a large lump about 4 feet high and 6 feet wide, covered in a silver satin bedspread. He lifted the sheet carefully. It was the great house in miniature. A perfect replica in dollhouse form, right down to the flower boxes in the front, which were full of tiny flowers. Albert Ellingham had this made for Alice months after she disappeared, he said. He reached over on the side and clicked a hidden button, then swung the dollhouse open on a hinge, like a giant book. There was the atrium, the giant staircase. Everything was perfect. The lamps and the tiny crystal doorknobs and the fireplaces. Even better, everything was arranged as it had been then. "I read about this dollhouse," Stevie said. "I didn't know it was still here." "You can go into the other rooms by opening the back and the side," Charles said. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Stevie moved closer and bent down to examine the little rooms. There was Alice's room, complete with teddy bears on the bed. Iris's dressing room had little silver hairbrushes and impossibly small cosmetics. The kitchen was full of china dishes the size of fingernails, and there was Albert Ellingham's office with 2 desks, tiny telephones, pictures on the wall, a replica of the past. "It's a masterpiece," Charles said. "It cost $10,000 in 1936 money. We would have sent it to a museum, but all of Alice's things have to remain in the house, as part of the estate. Everything that's Alice's stays here." Stevie helped him close the dollhouse, and the sheet was replaced. "So," he said, "why do you think I showed you this?" "Because it's awesome?" Stevie said. "It is, but that's not why." A dollhouse, the house in miniature, the world made small. "It's simple," Charles said, cutting right to the answer. "A grieving man made a perfect toy for his daughter that she would never see. This is about real people, not figures from fiction. I know this crime is popular, that crime itself is popular, but crime has a human face. If you're going to study crime, you have to remember the people involved." Stevie couldn't tell if this was a rebuke of some kind or just one of those one-to-grow-on lessons, but it was fair enough. At least he was taking her seriously. "To that end," he said, "before you get caught up in trying to break the case open, I want you to get involved in a smaller project, something that restores a human face to this tragedy." "What project?" Stevie asked. "Oh, I don't do that. You do that. You come up with something." "But is this a paper or—" Charles shook his head. "The rest is up to you." I've got to get to my next appointment. I'm excited to see what you're going to come up with. As Stevie walked back downstairs, her head spun with all she had just seen. Germaine Batt came out of Dr. Quinn's door and hurried down the stairs, moving past Stevie. Her expression suggested someone who had just seen a document detailing how they died. Nate was waiting below. He watched Germaine go and then turned around to Stevie. "Well," he said. "It was good," Stevie said. "He showed me the attic and some stuff the family owned." Nate nodded and folded his arms over his chest, looking around, not really paying attention. "Did you notice something strange about what Hayes said this morning?" Stevie asked. Nate turned back. "You mean about Hayes not knowing anything about the Monroeville Mall, the setting of Dawn of the Dead, and a super famous zombie thing?" "Yeah." Stevie was pleased at how quickly she and Nate seemed to link thoughts. "What did you make of it?" "I have no idea. The guy looks like he came out of a 3D printer." "Nathaniel?" came a voice from above. Dr. Quinn looked over the rail. "You may come up." "You'll be great," Stevie said, putting as positive a look on her face as she could. "Yeah, don't do that," Nate said. "Fine, it'll be horrible." "Thanks," he said. "I guess I'll see you at lunch or something." He settled his brown canvas backpack squarely on his shoulders and took the stairs like a man climbing up to the guillotine platform. Larry watched this from his desk and stopped Stevie as she exited. "Dr. Scott gave you a little tour," he asked. "Of the attic," Stevie said. Larry tipped his chair back and picked up a pen, holding it like a dart. "And what did you think of it?" "I think it's the best place I've ever seen," she said. Larry's expression never changed. His face was as stony and unmoving as the mountain they stood on. "Good meeting otherwise?" he asked. "I think there's a lot to do," Stevie said. "You'll be all right. They work you hard here, but no one ever died of it." "I guess if you do, you can just take the body out into the woods and bury it," Stevie said, smiling. Larry did not smile. His eyes crinkled just a bit at the corners in an expression Stevie could not read. This was maybe the kind of place where you didn't joke about the buried bodies. April 14th, 1936, 10 a.m. Leonard Nair Holmes was accustomed to gaps in the calendar, days that simply went away. Once in 1928, he misplaced all of June, and he had no solid proof that 1931 ever existed. People told him it did. They showed him newspapers and everything, but you can't believe everything you read. So when Leo woke in his darkened room in Ellingham House that Tuesday morning, he went about his business after his nice, refreshing sleep. It was time to find breakfast. He scuffed out of his room in slippers and a tattered and overly long maroon silk robe that dragged behind, gathering dust. This was something, considering that Leo was well over 6 feet tall. He'd had the dressing gown made for a giant, all loose sleeves and big pockets and long drag. He made it as far as the landing before being scooped up by Flora Robinson, who pulled him to his room. "Ever if I wanted to, darling," he said to her. "I'm going to need a grapefruit, 4 eggs, and about 3 ounces of gin before—" She clapped a hand over his mouth and shut the door. "What's gotten into you?" he said, reaching his long-fingered hand into the dressing-gown pocket to find his cigarette case. "Leo, Iris and Alice have been kidnapped." Leo slowly raised his peaked black eyebrows and pulled a cigarette from the silver and jade case. He tapped it a few times on the side before putting it to his mouth. He patted his pockets, finding nothing. Leo went to his bedstead and fumbled around for a moment, turning on the light and wincing. He dug through the pile of books and detritus, finally producing a battered box of matches to light his cigarette. They were taken when they went out for their drive yesterday, and there's been a ransom call," Flora said, keeping her voice low. "Albert brought George Marsh back. They're feeding the staff a bull story about how she spent the night in Burlington with a friend, and they're trying to keep the cops out of it for now. I know they did a drop last night that didn't go well. The kidnappers took the money, but they didn't get Iris and Alice back. They asked for more money. Albert's getting it now." Leo took a few long, congesting draws to get his brain moving. "Oh," he said. "Oh? That's all you can say? They've been kidnapped." Leo pulled hard on the cigarette, producing a burn audible from across the room, stroked the beard he had developed while he was sleeping with a blue fingernailed hand. He examined the edges of nail varnish for a moment. "Have you cleaned up?" he said. "I did what I could," she replied. "For her. I went to her room as soon as I realized something was happening. For all of us, Flora. A rising tide sinks all boats." "We need to do something," Flora said. "Such as?" "I don't know where she is. I barely know where I am." "We have to think. Who would do this? Maybe we should tell them everything. Maybe we have to." "Flora," Leo said slowly, "I realize you have a conscience, and that's what's talking now, but how will that help? It won't help us, and it certainly won't help Iris or Alice." "You don't know." "Think, Flory. Think. Have you noticed where we are? We are in the remote home of Albert Ellingham Tycoon. Anyone who likes money could have taken Iris and Alice. Everyone likes money, and anyone could do it because we are up on the side of a mountain. Albert will pay them." Flora sank back against the wall. "You, my dear, need something for your nerves," he said. "No," Flora said, "I don't." They were interrupted by a heavy rapping at the door. Leo motioned for Flora to open it. "Morning, Albert," Flora said. "I was just getting Leo out of bed. Everything all right?" "No," Albert said, all pretense gone. "It's not. Nair, I think you need to make a batch of your invisible ink." "I don't have my equipment." "We have a fully equipped science lab here." "Of course," Leo said. "Give me a few hours." "No," Albert said. "Immediately. This moment. Make as much as you can, as fast as you can. How long does it take?" "An hour?" Nair said, looking at Flora uncertainly. "Maybe 2. It depends on the quantity." "Then you have an hour. You take whatever is necessary from anywhere, but you must be quick." "Let me get dressed and I'll get to it." When Albert was gone, Flora pressed the door closed. "Ink?" Leo said. "Ransom money," Flora replied. "He must be marking it. You get to it and I'll see what else I can find out." Once Flora was gone, Leo locked the door and went to his closet. Inside on a small table was a small setup of scales and beakers and burners. There were delicate blue bottles that contained not an insignificant amount of chemicals of all sorts. Leo had always loved chemistry as a child. He mixed his own paints, which was why they had such an unusually vivid hue. He also made makeup, which was how he got blue nails, and Iris and Flora got such remarkable eyeshadows and blushes. It was why his own cheeks often sparkled faintly of silver. This was not a paint set or a makeup set. He didn't waste time. He put the bottles and beakers into his satchel, pulled a pair of trousers on over his night clothes, and walked downstairs as if he didn't have a care in the world. Okay. Waves from lurking while doing a puzzle, like a real puzzle. Hi, Anna. I got puppies. I got puppies for you. What kind of puzzle are you doing? Yeah, but like what kind of jigsaw? Is it a picture, a painting, and how many pieces? How are you doing? Maybe I'll put. Ooh, you should post a picture. A bunch of birds in the snow. That sounds nice. Switching ears. I miss doing puzzles. It's 1,000. Nice. Are you doing it with your family or just you for fun? I need to, it's taking a while. Yeah. 1,000 pieces does take a while. Me and my mom. Nice. We'll get one around Christmas and put it out and work on it during Christmas, but Usually it does take a while. And I can't, we do it in Kansas, and I don't always finish it before we leave, so, not that I'm the only one doing it, but we don't always finish it before me and Keegan have to leave to come back to Oklahoma, so. I forgot how much I like Leo. Does Maggie ever interrupt it? We did wonder last time if she had eaten a puzzle piece because she had apparently walked away with some puzzle pieces in her mouth. Mm-hmm. But I don't think she ever ate it. I don't know. I don't know if they ever finished it. Because I think it was still out the next time that we went, but it's been since February since we've been there. Yeah, silly Maggie. She's so cute. I guess when I was playing mid, my stepmom and dad put the stream up on the big TV, and when I was talking about Maggie, she would perk her ears up and look at the screen and be like, I don't understand, where is she? It was so cute. My stepmom sent me a video. Yeah, she's cute. I miss the doggos. I miss the doggos in my life. I did get to see my mom's doggos recently. And my sister-in-law's dog, who I'm his auntie. I kind of helped raise him and babysit him sometimes. Doggos are the best. And Boo is the best, but she's also kind of a dog. Don't tell her that, but she's pretty much a dog. She's a low-maintenance dog because her food is on an automatic feeder. So she's very easy to take care of compared to a doggo. And she loves tummy rubs, which not very many cats are like that. And she's the least aggressive cat ever. Low-maintenance dog. Yeah. Yeah, her behavior is very much like, she's still a cat, obviously, so her biological habits are cat-like, but her behavior and personality is more like a dog. She's very cuddly. She loves her people and she loves her attention. She loves her food. I'm sure if she had access to food all the time, she would just eat nonstop. Yeah. Anytime I've tried to give a cat a belly rub, they basically try to murder me. Yeah. She doesn't have her front claws. I guess she was declawed as a kitten. She has her back claws, but not her front claws. Which we kind of like because then she doesn't scratch on the furniture, and she still accidentally stabs me sometimes when she's walking on me, but it's not like she's ever trying to claw me or anything. And she's never bit me or anything like that. She's the least aggressive cat ever. Which, before I knew Boo, I hadn't met very many cats that were not aggressive, so I just had a very negative opinion of cats. I didn't like them. And I've met a lot of crazy cats, and they freaked me out. They scared me. I didn't like the claws and the unfriendly behavior. I like friendly kitties. But now that I have Boo, I know how to approach cats, as in wait for them to come to you, don't approach them. It is nice when cats don't try to murder you. Yeah. So Boo is very much dog-like in that sense, that she's very friendly, and she is skittish, she's really scared of stuff. But she loves humans, so as long as you're sitting down and not being jerky or making any wild gestures, she'll come up to you and be like, oh, okay, you can pet me now. I don't necessarily have anything against cats, but why cats if you could have a dog? But yay for having a dog like cat. Do you know how I got Boo? I don't know that you do. Because I never in a million years thought I would have a cat. I'm very much a dog person at heart. Which is funny because once we got Boo, Keegan was like, I think I'm a cat person. And it's not that he doesn't like dogs. He just, I think his personality is more suited to cat. Okay, well, so I am Boo's third mom. Her first mom is my best friend's older sister, who I think she was living in Houston at the time. And Boo showed up on her door as a kitten. I don't know if she had been dumped nearby or she was just a stray, but she was really sick and skinny. And so mommy number one, she took her in and she showed up on Halloween, which is why she's named Boo. And that's kind of, since she was a kitten, that's kind of where we put her birth date because we don't really know when she was born. And then when she moved to Singapore, and so she couldn't take her pets with her abroad, or it was going to be difficult. So she left Boo with my best friend and her family here. And then when my best friend moved out, she took Boo with her. And so my best friend is mommy number two. And then when Sarah, my best friend, moved in with her fiance, he's allergic. And she was like, well, my parents already have, at that time they had 2 cats and one of them was really old and kind of dying. So, and then, did they have Chloe? They at least had 1 or 2 dogs. Is anybody else having issues with Twitch today? It sounds like it could be Twitch. I'm sorry you're having problems, CJ. But anyways, my best friend, she was asking, she kind of put the bug in my ear and she was like, just so you know, I'm kind of thinking that I want you to have Boo. Maybe you can talk Keegan into it. And at that point, I had already had a relationship with Boo because I would go up and visit my best friend because she lived, at that time, she lived 2 hours away. And I would go hang out like some weekends, and then Boo would always wake me up in the middle of the night for cuddles. So we already had a bond. We already knew each other. And when Keegan and I went there to go to a concert with them, we slept on a blow-up mattress on her floor in her living room, and Boo slept with us. And when Keegan woke up, she was in the crook of his arm, cuddling with him, and that kind of sealed the deal. He was like, okay, we can take her. So we've had her for 1.5 years. And yeah, I love my kitty. I'm obsessed with her now, obviously. And hi, Hammer. Thank you for being here. Welcome for joining. We're taking an interlude to talk about dogs and cats because I'm an animal person and I love animals, so. Huh. Oh, autocorrect? Autocorrect changed yeeting to eating. That's very, very nice. Be safe eating and eating. Hi, Terry. Welcome for joining. Are you guys planning on streaming soon? I'm not going to go over your time or anything. I'm just curious. Are you still playing Cry? I assume. I'm getting lots of emails. I should probably start chapter 10. Autocorrect tried to change dog-like to flu-like for some reason. Oh, it was postponed? Oh, okay. Okay, well, I mean, I probably won't go longer than that anyways, but I'm sorry. Hopefully there will be more Terry v. Indy soon. But thank you all for being here. I hope you're having a good day. I'm going to continue with chapter 10, and I hope it gets better for CJ. Okay. Chapter 10. Stevie had great hopes for the boarding school dining hall. She knew better than to hope for floating candlesticks and ghosts, but long wooden tables didn't seem out of the question. Long tables were also featured in so many murder mysteries when all the guests of the house were arranged, eyeing each other over their wine glasses, wondering who Lord Dudley was going to put into his will, or who might have killed Ratchets with the golf club. What she actually got was something that looked a bit like the buffet area in the conference hotel she stayed in with her high school forensics club when they did a tournament in Hershey, just a little more artisanal and maybe crossed with a bit of ski lodge. Or what she understood ski lodges to look like. She'd never been to one. It had a high, peaked ceiling made of bright pine and stone walls scattered with tables of varying shapes and sizes. Round ones that could fit a large group, square ones for 4, and quite a large number of small ones that could fit only 1 or 2 people. There were also some plaid sofas and beanbags along the wall, farthest from the food, with a few low tables. Clearly some kind of coffee shop area for people who were too far up a mountain to get to a Starbucks. The chalkboard menu really seemed to emphasize that everything was local and that everything had maple syrup in it. The barbecue beef was in maple syrup barbecue sauce. The mac and cheese was made with smoked maple cheese. There was maple tofu and maple syrup dressing for the salads. "Did you forget you were in Vermont for a second?" Stevie said to Janelle as they took their trays. "Look down. You are standing in maple syrup." "Yeah," Janelle replied, a bit dispiritedly as she took some tofu and vegetables. "It's not my favorite." Nate stared down the sneeze guard at the maple-ized meats. "I'll drink the living blood of trees," he said. "Hit me." The drinks area had sparkling water on tap, fancy, and a cooler full of expensive natural sodas that were free to take, including one maple lime spruce flavored one that Stevie examined out of intense curiosity. This was the kind of stuff she never saw and wouldn't have had the money to buy, and it was just sitting here. This, more than anything else, seemed to indicate what kind of place this was. Free fancy sodas full of maple. She took one. She had to. Since it was still warm and bright, there were tables set up outside. Ellie had commandeered a picnic table and began waving at them to come over. Hayes sat across from her. Janelle and Stevie started for the open door, but Nate hesitated. "Eating outside is the worst," Nate said, waving away a fly from his plate, which seemed to be full of nothing but various meats. "Vitamin D," Stevie said. "You need it." "You don't know that," he said. "I want to eat my meat in my room with the lights off." "As a writer, are those really the words you want to use?" Stevie asked. "Yes," he replied. "Let's just sit with the others for today," Janelle said. "We'll sit inside next time." Nate sighed and went along. "So how was it?" Ellie asked as they sat down. "It was great," Janelle said. "They're giving me access to the workshop, and I'm getting space in the art barn to work on my Rube Goldberg machine for the Sindel Waxman competition. That's the high school version. There's even budget to get supplies. This place is amazing." "Mine was okay, I guess," Stevie asked. "I'm supposed to come up with some project this week about putting a human face on crime." Nate was quiet. "Well?" Janelle said. "She hates me," he said plainly. "Come on," Janelle said, shaking her head. "Stop it. You can't be like this on the first day." "Yeah, I'm not kidding." "She said she hated you?" Janelle said. She never looked at me. She said something about how it's so easy for anyone to be published now, and then read me a list of classes and told me to go. That doesn't mean she hates you. You had to be there, Nate said. Stevie felt eyes on her back, eyes to the side. She glanced around as subtly as she could and realized that no one was looking at her. People were looking towards Hayes. He was like a weak center of gravity. What the hell are you drinking? Nate said, turning the soda bottle to look at the label. Natural soda, Stevie said. It was there. I decided to try it. Why? Because I want to know. It's gonna be bad, Nate said. What is there to know? You don't know that. Oh my God. Janelle drew a hand over her face. Seriously, Nate? You have to like something. You can't go around being miserable about everything. Nate indicated that Stevie should drink and folded his arms. Stevie took a long swig. As soon as the drink hit the back of her throat, it attacked her palate with a woody, biting, cleaning fluid-type sensation that shot up the inside of her nose. She lurched forward, clasping her hand to her mouth just in time to avoid spraying Nate with a maple lime spruce fountain. She coughed so loudly that people at the adjoining table stared. Yes, Nate said. I see. Tell me more about your book, Stevie replied when she could speak again. Nate returned to studying his plate of meats. Janelle suddenly half stood and waved. Vi, she said, come sit here. Vi was back with her tinted glasses, wearing an overall short set, a red tank, and striped knee socks. Her hair... Oh. Oops. The author, messed up the pronouns here. Vi is supposed to be they, and it says her. Their hair was perhaps a little spikier than the day before. They slid in beside Janelle. Again, a tiny panic bubble glurped inside. What if Stevie was going to be completely friendless? What if Janelle didn't pair bond with her, and Nate never talked, and that was it? Maybe she had given up her life before and come up this mountain, and no one would like her, and she would have to go home an abject failure. That was anxiety talking. Janelle did like her. All she did was ask Vi to sit with them, and that was because she wanted to flirt with Vi. And Nate, he was there. He was just a tough nut to crack. Things righted themselves for a moment until David came out of the dining hall, his unruly hair sticking up at odd angles. He still hadn't changed out of the clothes from the night before. Stevie had that same quiver of recognition, like he was someone she knew well. But there was no way they could have met before. Hello, he said, much too loudly as he sat down. You love looking at me, I get it. You didn't drink that, did you? He pointed at the bottle of soda in front of Stevie. I got it for you, Stevie said, pushing the bottle his way. Ellie smiled and stretched out on the bench, putting her bare feet in David's lap. Bad news, Hayes, he said. Someone was watching you last night. He passed his phone down the table. Looks like we have our own personal TMZ, David said. Someone named Jermaine Bat? As he spoke, Stevie felt a ripple in the air around them. People had been looking, and now there was an undercurrent of chatter. Your girlfriend is going to be pissed, David observed. Hayes looked at the screen but didn't seem disturbed by what he saw. Oh well, he said, passing it back to David. Guess that's what happens when you're famous, David said, eyes everywhere. For no reason Stevie could determine, Ellie put her foot in David's face and he bit it. She screamed with laughter. It just happened out of the blue, something that weird and familiar. Stevie felt her insides flex and twist a bit, and a flush of anxiety run through her system. Vi and Janelle exchanged looks. Nate stubbornly refused to look up. Hayes didn't feel like he was really part of the group at all, somehow. Stevie felt very alone, except for a bee that had decided to linger by her ear and buzz furiously. Stevie was all right with being alone, generally, but this felt like she was being severed from the group, bit by bit. You can always come home. When she got back to her room, Stevie sat on the floor for a bit, looking at her research board. What if this place wasn't different? What if it was, as Ellie said, all bunnies on a hillside? She had come here because it was supposed to be different. What had she expected? She drummed her fingers on the floor for a moment and stared at the faces of the Ellingham family. Then she pulled her computer out of her bag. She couldn't sit there entertaining these kinds of thoughts. If she could learn some more about the people around her, maybe that would help. First, David. What was his deal? His last name, she knew from the student registry, was Eastman. David Eastman was a fairly common name, so there was a lot to sort through. Dozens of search results. She added Ellingham. She added California. She looked up and down through every social media platform. An hour passed, and her butt grew numb as she sat in the same scrunched position, her computer pressed between her chest and her knees. The more she looked, the less David seemed to exist. No profiles anywhere. "Where the hell are you?" she mumbled to herself. There was a knock on her door and a gentle push. Janelle appeared in the space. "Hey," she said, "can I come in?" "Sure." Stevie slapped the computer shut. Janelle fluttered in. She had a delicate way of walking on the balls of her feet, lifting the hem of her long sundress from the ground. Unlike Stevie, who was once again in black shorts, there had been a 3-for-2 deal and she got 3 pairs, all black. Janelle looked like a summer picnic. A faint scent of orangey perfume wafted from her as she moved. Her braided hair was coiled precisely on the top of her head. "I'm sorry," she said, coming and sitting on the floor opposite Stevie. "For what?" "I ignored you at lunch. I didn't mean to." "It's okay," Stevie said. "You were—" "Yeah," Janelle said, unable to contain a smile. She tucked her long floral dress around her knees and pulled the material taut. "You know I broke up with my girlfriend in the spring." "You told me." "And I didn't think, but why? I don't know, I don't want to be that person who gets obsessed and ignores their friends." Stevie felt a warm sensation all over, and something in her released that she didn't know she'd been holding. "You like her?" "I like them," Janelle corrected her. Sorry. Well, they seem to like you too." "I just have to take a breath," Janelle said, plucking a lip gloss from the side of her bra, blindly and perfectly applying a coat and tucking it back in place. "We just got here. Maybe this is some kind of, I don't know. Gotta keep my head in the game. I have a machine to make, and this schedule I got this morning is nuts. I love math, but this scares me. Differential equations in the morning, calc in the afternoon, physics in the middle." "That's nothing for you," Stevie said. "I like your board," Janelle said. "Everyone needs a conspiracy wall," Stevie said. "No," Janelle said, pointing. "You came here to do this. I've heard you talk about this. You got me interested, and I don't care about this stuff. You and me, we have this. And no— Come here, boo-boo. Come here. And no matter what, we're gonna stick together this year. I'm gonna make my machines, and you're going to solve a crime." "Hi, baby." When Janelle left, Stevie eased down onto her back and looked up at the ceiling. She had Janelle, and yes, she would solve her case. But now she had another one. Who was David? There was something there. She could feel it under her skin. Stevie had no fears of the dead. The living, however, sometimes gave her the creeps. End of chapter 10, and I've got a special guest here. Whoa, what you doing? Where you going? Did you finally get out of the bed? You did? Do you want to say hi? Like, you're not where you usually sit, Mom. Yeah, I know. I know it, baby. Oh, I'm so sorry. You're so cute. You're so cute. What are you doing? Do you want to sit in Mommy's lap? I mean, you don't fit, but we can try. You're too big, Boo-Boo. My lap's too small. Yeah, I know. Thank you for clapping, and thank you for clapping for Boo. Hey, sweet baby. You've got an audience. Did you know that? What did I miss? Postponed and canceled for today. Oops. Well, maybe in the beginning they refer to Vi as her because it's from Stevie's point of view, and Stevie doesn't know that Vi goes with they pronouns. So I guess that's it. I guess that's what makes sense. Okay, bye. She'll be back. I may take a break to do... Well, no. Never mind. I don't need to take a break. Because I'll probably go for 30 more minutes or so. How do you guys like the book so far? We're about 150 pages in. What do you think? And we haven't gotten to like there's another mystery that starts happening in the story, and we haven't quite gotten to that point yet. So I'm just curious to know what you guys think and where you think the story is going with the new cast of characters that we have. Oh, okay. I see your announcement there, Terry. No worries. We'll be excited whenever you can stream, but it's no pressure. I ended up missing a lot of your first stream, so I'm not super following the plot, but I'm enjoying just hearing you read. Oh, well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. All of the VODs are on YouTube. I don't think this command will work. No, it's not gonna work. I can pull up here. I can pull up my YouTube link in case you want to subscribe or bookmark them for later if you want to get caught up, but if not, that's okay too. I just want you to have that option available if my YouTube will even load. Everything's slow right now since I'm running OBS. And I've started editing my thumbnails. I'm actually excited about that because I didn't mean to go to the studio, but here we go. Oh, that's okay. That should be the link for you. What am I saying? What's my point? I support you in spirit. I appreciate the spirit support. Oh, but yeah, I'm updating my thumbnails because I didn't have thumbnails on my videos, so I'm going back through and adding them. And it's fun trying to find a good shot to take a picture of for the thumbnail of each stream. So like I went back to my my very first stream on Twitch was Nancy Drew, Creature of Kapu Cave. And that's interesting. I feel like I look a lot younger, even though it was 4 years ago? Yeah, maybe like 3.5. There's just been a lot that has happened since I started streaming. And I was 20, yes, I was 20, hold on, 24? 24. I guess, yeah, it's, when I start thinking about it, it doesn't seem that long ago, but I don't know. To me, I look younger in those. And there's just something different about me at that time. But I'm also like, we're in our apartment. I have very limited streaming capabilities and I don't know anything about Twitch yet. And so that's just, it's kind of funny to look at those cue YouTube comments saying you shouldn't reveal your age. I don't care. You guys know my age, so. Yeah. Anyways, okay, I think I will continue on with chapter 11. And Boo may or may not continue to meow and come in here because she's sitting kind of near the entrance to the dining room, licking her paw. So, she'll probably be back. Okay, let's do Chapter 11. The next morning, Stevie shuffled to the window, wiping sleep out of her eyes, and peeled back the edge of the curtain to look out on a green sky. She had believed in omens. She might well have taken this as had she believed in omens, she might well have taken this as a bad sign for the first morning of classes. But Stevie did not believe in omens. A green sky was a meteorological oddity, and maybe something for Instagram. Not a sign. Stevie brought an umbrella. Her first class, anatomy, was in the unsubtly named Genius Hall. There were only 6 people in the class. It helped that Pix was the teacher. At least something felt familiar. "Welcome to Anatomy and Physiology," she said. "We are going to talk about the human body without any skin, about the body of muscle and bone and organs. Over here," she walked over to the skeleton hanging at the side of the whiteboard and picked up its hands, "are the 206 bones of the human body fully articulated. One of the first questions I get about the skeleton is it real? Usually they're plastic, but this one is the real deal. It was a private donation to the Academy, and every year someone attempts to steal it. It is alarmed. Don't steal the skeleton. His name is Mr. Nelson. Be nice to Mr. Nelson. He's here to teach you about what's inside of you, inside of all of us." Mr. Nelson, the real skeleton, grimaced at them with his big, empty eyes. The bones themselves have their own geography, peaks and valleys where they associate with muscle and tissue. You are going to learn the relationship of these things, all of these systems, skeletal to muscular, nervous and endocrine, digestive, reproductive, excretory, integumentary, cardiovascular, respiratory. Once you learn what these things are, you will learn how they work. There was talk of quizzes and tests. There were a lot. Labs twice a week, and dissections. Far too many for Stevie's comfort. Teacher Pix was a lot more hardcore than House Pix. As Stevie stepped down to the green, the rain began, and in a moment she was in a hailstorm with chunks the size of marbles crashing around her. She put up the umbrella, but the battering was too severe. She ran. She made it as far as the cupola on the bottom end of the green, where she found herself stranded for a few minutes. When the hail got to the point where it was unlikely to pound her to death, she made a sprint for Eunomia, where she was to meet Dr. Velman for her one-on-one on criminology and sociology. Dr. Velman looked to be about 70, and after reading off the list of books he wanted Stevie to get, and finding she had read 2 of the major textbooks already, proceeded to spend half an hour talking about the art and craft of the hangman and how the best of them knew how to tie a knot just at the right location so that the victim's neck was broken quickly instead of suffocating. The next half hour, he talked about the breeding of dachshunds. After class, Stevie lingered for a moment outside the building, the rain drilling down on her umbrella. Her next class was in 2 hours. Ellingham ran like a college. You went to your classes, and your time between them was yours to make of as you wanted. Sorry, that's weird. It looks like the chat dropped for a second. Hopefully stream is still live. No moving along with the crush of a high school hallway. No study halls that stink of Doritos and the dishwasher steam from the cafeteria. This was like being an adult. So she stood there in the rain like an idiot. Everyone else seemed to have some idea. She wondered if she should go eat or sit in her room, or maybe just stand there forever. She took a deep breath of the moist mountain air. She had time. Where did she most want to go? What felt right? She turned toward the library. When she entered, no one was there except Kyoko, who sat alone at her massive desk eating an apple. "Hey," she called to Stevie, "come in. You're new, right?" "Yeah," Stevie said. "My name is Stevie Bell, and there's something I'd like to see." "You want to see Dolores's book?" Kyoko said, balancing her apple on her desk and wiping her hands. Stevie had been about to ask if they had materials on the case, so the offer of Dottie's book stunned her into silence. "I get a file on all the new students," Kyoko said. "It's the librarian's job to know what materials are needed. You're interested in the Ellingham case. Come on back." She waved Stevie around the desk station to a deep brown wooden door with the words "Library Office" painted in gold. Behind the door was a large but cozy room. Everything here was original. Wooden tables and desks, wooden cabinets. There were large tables with books that were in the process of being bound or covered. "So you know the book was returned to us in 1993, Kyoko said. "We keep it out of circulation because of its historical significance. Here." She pulled a pair of blue nitrile gloves from a box and indicated that Stevie should put them on, which Stevie was only too happy to do. There was nothing she really wanted more than the satisfying snap of the examination gloves. It was a small thing, but it made the investigation just a touch more legitimate. "Here we go," Kyoko said, putting on her own pair of gloves and opening up a glass-fronted banker's shelf and removing a thick volume. She set it on one of the tables and waved Stevie to it. The book was well preserved from years in evidence and library storage. It had a pristine dust jacket with a picture of Sherlock Holmes in a deer stalker, with a meerschaum drawn in red-on-white background. The book made a faint crackling noise as Stevie opened it. The pages were faintly yellow, and the type was very tight and dense. There was a slot for library cards that read Ellingham Academy Library, but there was no card inside. The book had been checked out, but never technically returned. Stevie turned the pages carefully, and as she got to the first story, A Study in Scarlet, she stopped. There was a jagged pencil mark on one of the first pages, roughly underlining one line. It was a very famous line, one of the most famous in all the stories. Sherlock said, "I consider that a man's brain originally is like a little empty attic, and you have to stock it with such furniture as you choose." "Did Dottie do this?" Stevie asked. "No idea. This particular book was checked out several times by students before her. Any one of them could have marked it up, but I noticed that as well." Stevie glanced through the book, but there was nothing else in it. It was simply a book of Sherlock Holmes stories, but it was the book. That was what mattered. "As it happens, we know a lot about Dolores's reading," Kyoko said. "This may also interest you." She opened one of the wooden filing cabinets and removed an expanded file. The first Ellingham librarian, Diana Cloakes, was a remarkable person, one of the top research librarians at the New York Public Library. Albert Ellingham hired her to come work here. Everyone he hired was the best at what they did. She bought an incredible collection, and she took meticulous notes on everything. Kyoko pulled a thick stack of typewritten sheets from the folder and paged through them, then carefully set a few piles down on one of the big book tables. When Albert Ellingham set up the school, she said, it was the policy that any book a student wanted could be ordered, and we have all the records from that first year. This pile, she pointed at one of the stacks, shows all requests from the 1935-36 school year. Dolores alone put in requests for over 500 books. The school ordered 487 of them. The remaining 13 were at a library and a university in Turkey that refused to sell them. If it's one of Dolores's, it will have the letters D.E. after the title. Stevie scanned down the list. Dolores had requested several works in Greek, a lot of novels Stevie had never heard of, some classics. There were all kinds of requests from other students, including a list of very intriguing titles. Gunmall's Magazine, Stevie read. Vice Squad Detective, Dime Detective, All True Fact Detective Stories. Oh, those, Kyoko said. Yeah, I love those. All pulp magazines. Most libraries or librarians would never have ordered them, but Ellingham's policy was clear. Whatever they asked for. I so wish we still had these, but I think the students took them and didn't give them back. Stevie felt like she would have gotten along with those students. 2 days at Ellingham Academy passed by in a series of flashes. First, there was just the weight of everything. The readings, the thought, the writing, the expectation of knowledge. It was kind of an academic monster truck rally. Everything went so fast. Session to session, reading to reading. Meals developed more of a rhythm. The overall grouping started to make sense. Some sat by houses, some were gamers, some read. Some people took food away and never stayed. Jermaine Batt tended to sit apart from everyone, watchful, always on a device. Gretchen, with the astonishing head of red hair, frequently held court over a long table inside. Hayes moved away from the Minerva table to start sitting with Maris and a very assorted group of artsy-looking people. Vi was a regular feature at the Minerva table. Nate started to talk a bit more. Ellie came and went, as did David, but they didn't come and go together. They didn't seem to be a couple, more just two people who were really comfortable in their skin and not very conscious of what made other people uncomfortable. After lit class on Wednesday, Stevie was walking across the green when a larger pair of ratty sneaker-clad feet fell in step beside her. Actually in step, deliberate and rhythmic. Stevie didn't need to look up, didn't want to, but her neck craned in that direction, seemingly of its own accord, like a flower bending towards the sun, if the sun was an annoying person who lived upstairs. She managed to avoid conversation with David for the last few days. If he was at her table, he sat at the other end. In Minerva, he stuck to his room, but now he was here, smiling, his hair flopping and unruly, his navy blue t-shirt looking conspicuously worn. There were holes in his shorts large enough to lose a phone. "Hey, murder girl," he said. "How's the case going? Got any perps? An unsub?" "How are your perps and unsubs? Am I doing it right? Perp, unsub, suspect?" Stevie clenched her jaw. You could trip her. You could kick her in the shin. She could handle those things. But no one was allowed to go after her mysteries. That cut right into her. "You know," Stevie said, "in a murder mystery, you'd end up dead." He smiled wider and nodded. His body was ropey, like the word from the truly devious letter. He was long and thin and was probably strong. He seemed to be made of knots. "What do you want?" she said, speeding up. "I'm just walking this way," David said. "We live in the same place. What's the problem?" "No problem." "Oh, good." They passed the cluster of statue heads on the way to Minerva. It was a weird landmark on the way home. Stevie was getting used to the statues, but this head-only grouping was still off-putting. It seemed like they were in the middle of a conversation and had stopped talking as strangers walked by. "So, Ellie was telling me about your conversation from the other day," he said. "What conversation?" Stevie said. She'd had several conversations with Ellie, but none seemed worth recounting. "About you," he said. Stevie had to think about this for a moment. Was he talking about the conversation from the tub room? The one where Ellie had asked about their love lives and she explained she didn't have one? "She said your parents work for Edward King," he said. She exhaled. Right conversation, different topic. "Yeah," she said, waving away B. "Some of us just get lucky, I guess." "You a big fan too?" "What do you think?" she said. "Who knows?" he said. "Does anyone really know anyone else? You love some Law and Order." There was no lower insult than this, and having to say she didn't like Edward King was even worse. Edward King was famously disgusting. Rich, corrupt, vain. He was the root of a lot of the trouble in Stevie's life. In less than 30 seconds, David had made 2 successful digs in the softest parts of her psyche. "I'm not a fan," she said in a low voice. "Oh, I was gonna say it sounds like your parents. I don't know why they like him," she snapped. "I try to work that one out all the time. I kind of want to get away from it here, so..." "Sure," he said, loping along. "You can't control your parents. I mean, my mother's a beekeeper and my father invented the smorgasbord." They had reached the blue door of Minerva. He tapped his ID to the panel to admit them. "We have time to get to know each other," he said. "So much time. See you around." He turned and went back the way they had come. He didn't even go inside. Stevie was left to wonder what the hell had just happened to her. This would not be Stevie's only strange encounter that day. The next would come an hour or 2 later in the form of Hayes Major leaning in her doorway as she was trying to read. "Hey," he said, "can I talk to you?" He was wearing a tight white t-shirt, a fresh one, possibly never worn before. Stevie didn't buy white t-shirts. Their shelf life was too short. "Do you mind if I come in?" he asked. "Sure," she said. He left the door wide open and came inside with his easy, comfortable way. She indicated that the floor was his if he wanted to stay. He didn't sit. He squatted. It didn't look even remotely comfortable. It just showed off the tone of his leg muscles and the outline of his patella. Anatomy word, kneecaps. She was already using her knowledge. "I had an idea," he said as he balanced on his little invisible stool. "You mentioned the other day that you needed a project. Well, so do I. I was thinking, what if we worked together on something?" Dust motes danced in the air between Hayes and Stevie. In the bright, late afternoon light, his hair had an actual glow, like it was spun of golden thread. He could have been a statue model in Greece or Rome. The light was so rich that he seemed like a statue now, an otherworldly nature made of light and shade, with a southern accent and a form-fitting shirt. Oh, I didn't know he had a southern accent. Oops. Stevie wasn't sure if the wooziness she felt around him was attraction or just numb confusion as her brain trying to work out his exact species. "Looks human," it was saying to itself, "but cannot be. Cheekbones not possible. Is simulation. Origin unknown." "Together?" she said, pulling herself out of her mental wanderings. "See, my agent..." He dug a neatly manicured fingernail coyly into the wooden floor as he said this word. "Thinks I should make another series. I've been thinking about what to do, and I thought, what about the stuff that happened here? The crimes, the kidnapping thing. You know, about that." "About?" Hayes was super distracting to talk to in close quarters, and now he was talking about making a series. None of this made sense. "The crimes," he said again. "You know about the crimes, right? The crime here? Crimes." "Crimes," she repeated. "Yeah, I do, but what?" She was not coming off well. "You'd be like the technical director. The expert. I even had an idea for a trailer. We could shoot it in that tunnel, the one under the sunken garden." Everything came into sharp focus in a second. "The tunnel?" she said. "You mean the one that the kidnappers used?" "Under the sunken garden," he repeated. "That tunnel has been filled in since 1938, Stevie said. "They dug it out in the spring," Hayes said, his smile widening. "For construction. They started at the end of last school year. I've already been in it." "You were in the tunnel?" Stevie said. She was leaning forward, and she made no effort to hide the urgency in her voice. "Once," he said. "Last year, when they first excavated it." The idea of the tunnel being open again had never occurred to Stevie. She really did not believe in fate, but the timing of this was incredible. "I was just thinking how it would be a good place to make something. And you're here now, and you know all of the stuff about the crimes. People would like that. We'd be the first ones to show what the tunnel looks like." Stevie's heart was pounding hard. "Are we allowed in there?" "Well," Hayes unfurled his smile slowly. "Technically, we don't know about it. They tried to hide the fact that they opened it up, but I was back there one day, and we saw that they were taking out tons of dirt." "And you actually went in?" "Actually went in," Hayes said. but it's just an idea. If you're too busy, I understand. I'll do it, Stevie said. Right, or whatever, I'll do it. Great, Hayes replied. So you'll get Nate, and you guys can write something over the weekend. By Monday? Wait, what? It doesn't have to be long, Hayes said. 5 pages or something, 10. Just something about the crime, something that happens in the tunnel. Didn't some student die? Or the thing with the ransom? Wasn't there a thing with a ransom, with a boat or something, in the second garden? Stevie nodded. So that, he said, do that. Write something with the tunnel and something about the ransom in the sunken garden. We can do that. This is going to be great. Minutes later, he was gone, and Stevie wondered how you made a script. It was a minor point. She was going into the tunnel. That was all that mattered. Strange Conversation 3 was instigated by Stevie. Think about it, Stevie said, sitting in Nate's desk chair later that evening. I could give you all the facts. There are transcripts. There are files. It's practically written. You'd barely need to do anything. I don't know anything about writing scripts, Nate said. But you write. Scripts are totally different, Nate said. They're like an x-ray of a book, just the bones. The words people say and the things they do. Books are everything. What the characters see and feel and how everything is told. It sounds easier, Stevie pointed out. It's a different thing, Nate said. I'm supposed to show Dr. Quinn outlines for the next 3 chapters of my book, plus all this reading. Maybe, Steve said, if you wrote this, Dr. Quinn would let you have some more time on the book. You could write this instead of that for a while. They love group projects here. Much like Stevie had been lured in by the tunnel, Nate could not resist the offer of skipping out on his book. So I take this stuff and make it into some scripts, he said. And you do what? I advise on technical matters. Meaning, I explain what happened, she said. I help you. We could call it Truly Devious. Nate exhaled long through his nose. Fine, he said. Anything is better than doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm going to take a little drink moment here before I start the flashback. It's hard to keep doing the low voices, even though I know it's not that low. April 14th, 1936, 3 p.m. Robert Mackenzie was supervising the delivery of large sums of cash from New York. $200,000 was piled on the floor throughout the day. As he and George Marsh sorted the money, Ellingham removed 2 small blue bottles from a cabinet along with a fine brush. What's that? Marsh asked. A solution that Nair brewed up that we use for our games, Ellingham said. It dries completely clear. To see it, you need to use a solution and a special light. This stuff is so good that I've often suggested to Nair that he sell it to the government. If for some reason things don't go as they should tonight, I want to be able to track these bills. The bills were marked down the side with a slash of the paint. Ellingham took the further measure of marking the bundle wrappers with his fingerprint. Fans were placed around the room to dry everything quickly, and then the money was packed into 4 bags. I got some people out watching street corners tonight, Marsh said. Didn't tell them why or what for, just to mark down license plates and anything unusual. I gave them 50 cents each if they give me good info. Give them $5 each, Ellingham said. Give them whatever they want. For $5, Marsh replied, they'll know this is big, and they might start coming up with stories. 50 cents keeps them honest and the profile low. Robert Mackenzie watched this all nervously. The call with instructions came at 7:07 that evening. The instructions said to move the money into Burlington and wait by a selected telephone booth for a call. Ellingham himself drove the car with Robert Mackenzie and George Marsh riding along. Each man brought a revolver. They arrived just before 8 p.m. when the phone rang. From there, they were instructed to drive toward Rock Point. Rock Point is very much what it sounds like, a rocky point off the side of Burlington jutting into Lake Champlain. The point was largely uninhabited and the terrain rough. Once they arrived, they found an arrow chalked on the ground, pointing to the narrow dirt and rock path toward the water. "Robert," Ellingham said, "you stay here with the car." Robert looked at the pitch-black path into the rocky wooded point. "Mr. Ellingham, this is—" "You heard me, Robert. Stay here. Stay here. If you see or hear nothing from us in an hour, turn around and drive back into town and get help." Ellingham switched on his flashlight. His shoes slipped a bit against the slick rocks as he began the walk into the dark. "There's a light ahead," he said. The path was marked by a series of impromptu lanterns made out of tin cans that would later be traced back to a diner in town. The diner appeared to have nothing to do with the crime. They had simply put out the garbage the night before. The garbage men on their route reported that their trash was empty in the morning. Someone had stolen the garbage. Even when the tiny tin can lights, the path was treacherous and blind, and it got more so as the lights spread out and led to the cliff face. Finally, at one rocky ledge, they found 3 cans and a coiled rope. Below, a lantern flashed. "There's a boat down there," Marsh said, looking over carefully, his gun ready. "Use the rope," called up a voice. "Lower the money." "Not until you show us Mrs. Ellingham and Alice," Marsh called back. "Look next to you." Ellingham scrabbled around and called for his wife, but found on the ground a handbag and a child's shoe. "We need a better sign," Marsh said. "Proof of life." Ellingham dropped his bag to the ground and tied the end of the rope to the handles. Marsh sighed and helped him secure it. "I'm putting the money on the end of the rope." "I'm putting the money on the rope," Ellingham yelled. "Please, get my wife and child to a safe place so we can collect them. We have no interest in you, only them." The money went over the rock face, all 4 bags of it. Ellingham tossed the rope end over the side. "That's everything," Ellingham yelled. Below, the lantern began to flicker in a strange pattern. "What are they doing?" Ellingham said. "What is that? It's not Morse." "I have no idea," Marsh said, cocking his revolver. "Don't shoot at that boat. They could be in there." The lantern went out. For a solid minute there was no sound but the gentle lapping of the water and the wind. "What's happening?" Ellingham asked. For the first time that night he sounded truly vulnerable and afraid. "I don't know," Marsh said. "Hello?" Ellingham yelled. "I gave you the money. What now? Where are they?" The tiny boat sailed into oblivion, along with any chance of recovering Iris or Alice. Okay. Well, we finished 4 whole chapters. Standing there forever hype. Oh, no, actually. Standing there forever was implied when you said I'm playing mid. Odd line to choose to tell people you're about to be murdered. I missed that one. I missed which one you're referring to. Well, I think I'll do one more chapter, and then I will call it a night. I still don't know what kind of music to do, but I just need to make sure it's not going to be... Oh, the Sherlock Holmes quote that your brain is like an attic, but the walls aren't elastic, so don't fill it with crap. Yep. I actually was what Dottie underlined. Yeah, gotcha. I also, I just read A Study in Scarlet, so, yeah, interesting quote to be marking, right? Okay, let's go. Chapter 12. Chapter 12 hype. Okay. The process of writing Truly Devious, the video series, was not as smooth as Stevie had promised. On the first day, Nate greeted Stevie in the morning with a huge smile. "I drafted 2 chapters of the new book last night," he said. "I mean, they're drafts. I was writing so fast, Stevie. I swear to you, I wrote like 15,000 words last night." "Is that good?" she asked. "I don't know," he said. "But it turns out that making me write this screenplay made me want to write anything else, which meant I worked on my book." "Wait," Stevie said. "Wait, does that mean you didn't write the script?" Nate shook his head happily. "Yep," he said. By dinner, the story had changed. "Everything I wrote last night is terrible," he said. "And we have no script. Let's write this thing. Show me that stuff again." This pattern repeated several times. Stevie would produce copied transcripts of the police interviews. These were all readily available online. Nate would go off to write. Nate would do something else. Finally, Stevie sat down with Nate at the farm table for 5 hours, and side by side, passing the computer back and forth, they assembled 10 pages of script. The scene opened in the tunnel with Hayes reading the Truly Devious letter. Then it went to the scene of the ransom drop with Hayes playing Albert Ellingham. How Hayes was going to play Albert Ellingham, a man 30 years his senior, was not their problem, nor was the fact that this scene involved Albert Ellingham rowing a boat across the lake that was no longer there. What mattered was that it all took place in the sunken garden, because maybe if they shot there, Stevie could get into the observatory. Priorities. All in all, she was pleased with what they had done. The results looked script-like, with people saying words and doing things. On Monday evening, as it thundered outside, Stevie and Nate presented the script to a small team who assembled in the art barn. Along with her and Nate, there was Maris, who looked every inch the vixen in a tight black fuzzy sweater that was far too heavy for the weather. Her lips were a luminous poppy red. She had on semi-sheer black stockings with a seam running up the back, which she showed off by stretching her legs along the floor and rotating her feet, exposing her calves. She had a mug of smoky tea. Its steam perfumed the space. "I think you guys know Maris," Hayes said. "She's going to help with the filming and direction." There was also someone Stevie had seen before, in the yurt that first night. His face was long, with a high forehead and a lantern jaw and premature worry wrinkles in his forehead. He wore a long black coat, and a scarlet scarf swung over his shoulders. "This is Dash," Hayes said. "He's going to be our stage manager. Dash is the best." Hayes read out the script from his computer, with Maris filling in the set directions. It was rough in spots, and most of it was just verbatim from the various case documents, but Nate had given it enough of a shape. Stevie had chosen the best parts of the transcripts, and to his credit, Hayes did a good job of playing Albert Ellingham. Somehow, they had actually made something that felt like a show. "This is amazing," Hayes said as he finished. "Hey, Maris, would you take a few pictures? Just to document the working process." "Sure," she said, pulling out her phone and taking a few photos of Hayes studying his computer. "I need more detail," Dash said. "What was it like that night?" "It was foggy," Stevie said. "We can do fog," Dash said, pulling out his phone. "You want fog? We can for sure do fog." "Lots of fog," Hayes said. "Oh yeah," Dash nodded. "I can rig a few T-90s all over the sunken garden. That chemical fog hangs low. We can make it look like the lake is full of fog." "Great," Hayes said. "Fog. I'm gonna need fog machines, some poles to rig lights. We can make this work." The next steps involved making it all work, and Stevie and Nate were not off the hook yet. There were costumes to assemble and props to prepare. For the costumes, Maris and Stevie went to the Ellingham Academy Theater. It was a small, dedicated space that looked like a tiny Greek temple from the outside. The theater space had a long, low stage room for about 100 people and black walls. The costume area was accessed by climbing a ladder in the corner of the lobby, which led to an attic that was composed of 2 long rooms separated by a hallway only 2 feet wide. The costume closet was on one side, with a sharply sloped roof Stevie kept hitting her head on. It was crammed completely with clothes racks, overstuffed with random clothing items that seemed to be loosely grouped by type. There was a rack thickly packed with men's suiting of all kinds, a rack of coats, a rack of dresses from every era, racks of fuzzy things, plaster and plastic armor, amorphous items that probably made sense in some context, like a giant foam French fry container, and a brown sack covered in felt eyeballs. The floor was a sea of shoes and boots, and the racks above were hats, helmets, purses, shields, feathers. Just feathers? Just feathers. Why? And items of no known nature or provenance. The whole thing smelled like a thrift shop that had been baked in a low oven and felt like a too tight and too long hug by a rejected Muppet. Eventually, 2 suits were chosen, along with a hat and an overcoat. The prop closet, which was just as oppressive and even more loosely organized, produced a canvas bag and an oar for the fake boat. Wednesday evening brought something unexpected: construction. The group gathered in the workshop, a barn structure off to the side of the maintenance area. It was open and cold and contained things that didn't feature much in Stevie's daily life. Tables with circular saws, racks of tools, large industrial bins. This was where the students of Ellingham came to make things that required space and tools and fire. This didn't include too many people, but it did include Janelle, who had a welding mask over her face and was staring down 2 pieces of metal. She lifted the mask as Stevie came in and waved. "I need you to cut these into lengths," Dash said to Stevie, pointing at some wood. "Here are all the measurements." He shoved a piece of paper at Stevie. She looked blankly at a bunch of numbers. "What?" she said. "Cut the wood into lengths." Dash pointed at the wood, then the circular saw. "You must be kidding," Stevie said. "I'll do it," Maris said, her voice thick with a "can you believe this one doesn't even use a circular saw" vibe. She sauntered up to the saw in her fuzzy sweater and leaned over expertly. The buzzsaw cranked to life, and Maris put a board on it and sliced it in 2. The air filled with the scent of sawdust. Hayes came sauntering in while all of this work was going on, greeted everyone, and rested on the ground and studied his script. "Hey," Janelle said as Dash scooped up some poles from an upright storage container in the corner. "What are you doing with those?" "Making light rigs," Dash said. "Oh, no, you're not. Those are my poles." "You can't need all these poles," Dash said. "I do," Janelle said. "We just need them for a few days." "My poles are specially measured for my machine. These aren't just any poles," Janelle said. "Look, there's no way you need all these poles. I'm taking some." "Could we borrow a few?" Stevie said quietly. "I'll make sure you get them back." "For you," Janelle said, "I would only give my poles to you." Dash had the poles out of the bucket in a shot and hurried them out of the workshop. Maris had stopped sawing for a bit and was looking at a large blue industrial bin on the side of the room. "There's dry ice here," she called to Dash. "Lots of it." "I have enough fog machines," he said. "The liquid is easier to work with." Maris shrugged and shut the container. After constructing their ramps and organizing their poles and all the things that would be needed to film in the sunken garden on Saturday, the plan was made for the excursion into the tunnel. It would be the next night, with everyone meeting behind the art barn at 7. Still smelling of sawdust, Stevie walked home and dropped into bed. For a few minutes she rested on her back, fully dressed, and felt the cool air from the window brush against her face. The late summer twilight fell into darkness. There were footsteps creaking above her. David was home. She could tell everyone in her house by their footsteps. She started to understand how Minerva settled and shifted almost musically. She reached up and felt the cool iron of the bedstead. She pulled her comforter over her, sealing herself in with the sawdust smell coming off her sweatpants. Janelle was behind one wall, Ellie the other. She was in the middle, and it felt utterly normal. The thought grabbed her. She had settled in. This was home, and she had almost completed a major project about the Ellingham case with her friends. Well, Nate was her friend, and probably Hayes and Maris and Dash. Her friend Janelle gave her supplies. A pleasant wave of satisfaction swept over her, and it inspired her to lean over and grab her phone from the bedside stand. She had a note app on her phone that had carefully organized files of images and information about the Ellingham case. She clicked open the folder marked Social. This was her research on the life the Ellinghams had led up here before the tragedy. Back when the house was just a weird and wonderful mountain showpiece, and famous friends would come to ski in the winter, watch the leaves in the fall, and drink all the time. Some of those people probably stayed in this building, in this room, back before the school was opened and Minerva was a guest house. Stevie flipped through, stopping on one of her favorites, an image of a guest list from a party in 1929. She had no idea who these people were, but she loved reading the names. Gus Swenson, the Bill Body twins, Esther Neal and Buck Randolph, the Davis sisters, Greta and Flo, Bernard Hindish, Lady Isabella de Isla, Dr. Frank Dodds, Frankie Sullivan, the Van Warners, Telegraph McMurray, and Lorna Darvish. The list went on and on. They had come to have their champagne here, to dance under the stars. Actors, writers, artists, socialites. And then Dottie Epstein lived here. Stevie had read about Dottie, one of the brightest in her school. Strong-willed, brilliant. A tough Lower East Side girl who could steal apples and quote Virgil. Stevie reached down for her phone to look at Dottie's picture for perhaps the 1,000th time. She had a head of brown curls, apple cheeks, and a gap between her front teeth. She was the often forgotten victim because she was not rich. She did not own a school. She was just a smart girl trying to make something of herself at Ellingham Academy. She read mysteries. She had gone to the observatory to read, leaving a book behind. Stevie set her phone on her stomach and stared up at the ceiling for a long time. The case needed solving for all of them, but maybe Dottie most of all. Dottie who loved mysteries. Tomorrow night she would go into the tunnel that had been blocked since 1938. Truly, this was something no one else who looked into the case in recent decades had done. She was literally going to be on new ground. Dottie had passed through that tunnel. She had died in or near, or because of it. The tunnel marked the place where Dottie crossed over from life to death. Stevie fell asleep in this position, phone on her stomach, thinking about Dottie in the tunnel. A pulse of light brought her back to consciousness. Stevie blinked, confused. Her brain tried to work out the source of the light for a split second. Car headlights? No. Still mostly asleep, she pushed herself up on one arm. The light, or something made of light, was on the wall. It filled the space next to the fireplace. Blobs of color. Letters. Words. It was all a scramble in her brain until she realized the blobs were a message made out of cut-out letters. Riddle, riddle on the wall. Murder comes to pay a call. A body in a lonely field kills its secrets. Will its secrets be revealed? Or the lady in the lake? Will she give the lucky break? Alice, Alice, where are you? Won't you give a single clue? The detective's here. It's time to play. Truly Devious lives another day. In another flash, the message was gone. And that is where we're going to end. So that's kind of a cliffhanger. And at that point in the book, I was like, okay, I can't stop. I just got to sit down and read all of this, the rest of it, all the way through. Welcome for clapping. Thank you for clapping. Like I said, I'm going to end it here, but thank you so much for being here. Let's see. I'm going to be streaming again on Wednesday, the same time, 3 p.m. Central Time, and we'll be continuing to read some Truly Devious. And my background disappeared. That's weird. Okay, I will be investigating that further, but that's kind of creepy, considering what we just read. Okay. Well, anyways, thank you all for being here. I will see you Wednesday, if not sooner. And take care of yourselves.